it's not so easy to always be so clear-minded. And I think a lot of times our monkey brains, right, are wired in a way that, hey, I get reward, I feel happy. I don't get reward, I feel unhappy.
Yeah.
And I think there is a very different way we can approach this that can make us happy even when we don't get the things that we want. All right. So welcome to the Level Up podcast. Today we have an amazing guest here with us, Stefan. And it's so amazing to have this conversation with you finally, because we've had so many really deep, meaningful conversations about life in general, about what happiness means to us, about how to really pursue our best selves. And, what I really admire and appreciate about your journey is that there's so many things that I've seen that have shaped your life. You've done so many things in your life and had so many experiences that have made you a better person and made you the person you are today. So I think, how about you introduce yourself a bit to the camera and let the audience know who you are, kind of where you're from, a bit of your background story, and then we'll jump into what leveling up means for us.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name is Stefan. So I've been pretty much born and raised in Austria, and spent there my first 25 years of my life. And after that, I was really quite realizing that I want to go be somewhere else. And so at that age, I actually managed to convince my previous bosses to actually go to Asia. And I moved to Thailand around the age of 25 and been in Asia ever since. So that's been a really fun journey because I really got a chance to see a bunch of different cultures, live in a bunch of different cities and countries. And really, I think was one of the most important decisions as well for my life to actually get to where I am. Professionally, I'm currently the CTO of a company called Guardrails, and I'm a security expert that focuses on application security. I have a lot of other interests as well, obviously, but I also really am excited about the chat we have today because, like you said, we have a bunch of good conversations already.
Yeah.
And it's been always fun to see where these conversations go. So looking forward to our chat today.
I love that. And I think your diverse background and experience definitely gives you a lot of really interesting insights that I find that a lot of people don't have, right? And I think that's the nature of things. You need to really experience things for yourself to be able to okay, that's how I need to shift my perspective perhaps to live that life that I want. And I wonder let's do a quick compare and contrast because European roots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then move to Asia. What do you think the biggest learning has been, if there is a biggest learning for you?
I think the biggest learning is that people are always different and that's okay. Culture is playing such an important role in how you're growing up and your surroundings. But at the end of the day, if you want to have meaningful relationships and meaningful encounters in life, it's really important to understand that everybody comes from a different perspective, from a different, has a different life story. But at the end of the day, if you treat everybody like a human, like they are, and you keep an open mind, it's essentially the best way to live life, I feel.
Yeah, and especially in this very interconnected, very global world we live in today, where, if we don't figure out how to interact and coexist with other people, we can't live life, right? We have to deal with different cultures. We have to deal with different traditions, different ways to view the world. And I think there's a very stark contrast between choosing to live in a way where, hey, I have my perspective and I'm not going to change that versus hey, what can I learn from the way that you live your life and the way that you are experiencing the world? Because your way of seeing the world is beautiful too, right?
For sure.
It's not just unidimensional, so to speak. Yeah. So I guess the next question I have for you is okay, so that's where you're from and that's where you went, but where would you say your life currently is today? What is, this version of Stefan?
Very good question. So I would say right now I'm in a spot where I feel quite comfortable with who I am and who I've become. I'm quite authentic in that sense in terms of, how I developed and who I am intrinsically. And I also realize, what I want out of life and know what I actually what happiness means to me, what kind of like why I'm here and what I'm doing and how I'm doing this.
What does happiness mean to you?
Actually, happiness means, it's hard to say. Is to me, happiness is almost more like a feeling of contentness, where you're okay with where you are, you're okay with what you're doing, and you feel grateful and happy in the way that you are living life right now. And it's less about, oh, I want to get to that number on my bank account, or I want to buy this nice house, or have like these material things. It's more like really enjoying the journey that is life as you go through it.
Yeah.
And obviously there's some ups, there's some downs, but if you are enthusiastic and passionate and happy about where you are in life and where you're going, you can deal with anything really. And I really feel that this is kind of like where I am right now, and I know this was not always the case.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a very nice feeling to experience, and
Thank you for sharing that. And I think like something we talk about on this show often is, we break down the things, that make us happy, or you can call them our wants, for example, right, into like 3 categories. I think we usually start off with wanting to have things, right? Which is what you mentioned, like, hey, I want that sports car, I want that house, I want, whatever material good. And then it becomes to, I want to do things, right? This is my bucket list. I want to travel to this country, I want to go to that country, I want to live there, I want to do that thing, I want to make this impact, etc. And then finally, you go towards like a being, right?
Yeah.
This is the person I want to be. So can you walk me through that process for you? Like, I'm so curious, like, what was your progression through those 3 kind of types of wants in your life?
I think I never really was interested in the haves, or I mean, I know also growing up, a lot of my friends always wanted the latest tech gadget and this and that, and buy like these nice shoes or whatever it is, right? And again, there's no judgment in any of this. It's totally fine, right? But I was never really wired that way. For me, it was always more like the doing part and doing things that I really enjoy. So I never really had the aspiration or the drive to, work on the things that I need to have and must have to be achieving happiness, or feeling defined, or like feeling like maybe for my status or other things.
Did you have everything you wanted growing up? Like, I'm just curious, like, do you feel like your parents got you the things that you wanted?
Actually, like, I definitely was not spoiled. I remember one thing specifically where I was asking to get a Nintendo, and they said yes, and I was really surprised that I could get it, right? So it was not like everything I want was there. It was actually very basic, very focused on, everything I need in terms of, education, these kind of things. Yes, very fortunate to have had this provided. But no, I was definitely not like spoiled, and like didn't even get pocket money and these kind of things, even though other friends would get it. So there was never this kind of aspect to life.
So then I'm curious, like, because I think, many people have had similar experiences where, again, we're lucky to have parents to provide for us. We're lucky to have them, support us in our needs, right? Schooling and all those things. But because there was always this like, oh, I mean, that kid had that thing, they have the latest Nintendo and they have that thing. Like, was there no feelings ever of, wanting something that you just didn't have access to?
I mean, I think there definitely were times like this, no question about it. But it's also been such a long time, right? So while maybe in the early years, like there was this kind of maybe there was greed, or maybe it was like, hey, why don't I have this? I think the only one was, I remember like in Austria growing up, not having cable television. There's only 2 stations, right? And the 2 stations are, like very basic, like basic programming, you don't really can choose other things.
Sure.
And I know a lot of my friends had like the, many stations, cable network and all of these things.
The American channels.
Yeah, exactly. Or the German channels and all of these things. So that was one thing where like, yeah, we never had that. And I felt like, it would be nice because like so much popular culture stuff was passing me by essentially.
Sure.
But besides that, like, it was actually, I think, a good thing not to grow up with too much of these television channels and all of this content essentially.
Sure.
But I think, it's been a while, so I don't really remember it too much. But I think the baseline was never like coming from a place of, okay, I need to have this in order to be feeling content or something.
You were satisfied for the most part with the way your life was.
I was more focused on having ability to stimulate my intellectual curiosity, on not even intellectual, like my passions, be it like even playing computer games at a while, like when I was like in my teens and stuff like that. That really gave me joy because it was something I could do and I could do to get better at. And, that was always something I really enjoyed, having the ability to follow my interests essentially.
Right. And I think that would be like a form of doing, right? Like
absolutely,
you're just doing those things and building up skills and essentially continuously checking off things on the bucket list. You can really call it that. Okay, cool. Like what are some things on your bucket list that you finished that like you're like, very happy about?
And this is also a change that I went through, like making sure that the things that actually are important to me, that I get a chance to work on them and do them and not wait for a certain time in life where I can finally go do this. Or now I can finally do a trip around the world because now I earned it. Right. It's more like I'd rather take these little kind of steps along the way to find a way to, to just achieve these things. But I don't keep a tally. I don't think, okay, look, I've done 200 countries, visited, whatever, right? It's
sure.
It's really more like, for me, the most like having this part where, I feel like I'm, the saying, don't give life years, give years life.
Oh, interesting. What does that mean to you? Like, that's a very deep quote, I think.
It kind of means like the way you ideally can live life is not, just letting the years pass by without doing anything meaningful, but just, make sure that you live your life in a way that a year feels like 5. And not that it needs to be cram-packed with all of these things to make it worth, but I think if with this mindset and, keeping it adventurous, keeping it open and not like, keeping it too easy and too convenient, I think it's just like a very nice way of doing this. And actually, I was just when I went for the walk this morning. We just Sarah and me just looked back, and my birthday is coming up in a few weeks, right?
Yes.
And we thought back to a year ago when we had like actually a big birthday party, and I honestly thought it's been at least 2 years since then.
Wow.
Because all of the things that happened since then, like really make like. We couldn't believe it, both of us, there's like so many things going on.
Yes.
And I think that's really a fun part about it, right? So it's not about ticking things off, but trying to maximize the things that are important in life and, not settling for basic things, which is not necessarily what I mean with this, but just trying to make sure that the things that you actually are aware of, that you are that you care about,
meaning.
That you make time for them as well and don't push them out to a arbitrary point in the future where you then can live your life or achieve the things that you want to achieve. Yeah.
So for me to recap, just to make sure I understand, right? You have basically, from growing up, I think you've had a stable life in a sense where you've had, things that were essentially provided by your parents and by your community. So you didn't really have much of a want situation for anything to have, right? You didn't really have that many things that like, hey, I really want to have this thing, right? And there's no way I can get it. Like for the most part, that was handled, which is really fortunate. And I love that. And I think that actually shaped a lot of how you are today, right? Because it gave you that clarity to say, hey, what's a higher order pursuit I can do?
Yeah.
And then that higher order pursuit came in the form of doing, but seemingly, and I love this, is that it wasn't structured at all. It was just like, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm going to make sure that I do it, within the next X years, right? Or X period, right? As short as possible versus pushing it all the way to like a retirement phase where it's like, I'm only going to travel the world when I'm retired.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. And then I think the next thing then is like, if we ask the question, like, what drives you today? Right. And I'm sure it's more of the same, but like, if we can go in detail, like, what is this aspiration that you have? Like, where do you want to go? Is there an answer you can give for that?
Yeah, I think so. And one other thing that may be useful to share is also how my career evolved essentially and how I made a career. Like in school, for example, I didn't really like school at all, right? It was really a very boring undertaking. I didn't really care about many of the subjects. I really cared about, of course, playing computer games and computers and all of these things.
Yeah, all of us.
But there was no like really support for IT or anything back then. That was really actually what I was passionate about. But once I managed to graduate, I think that's where also really my drive came, because looking back, I never went for, I want to become this VP of this company, or I want to, like, it was always like, I'm really interested in this.
Okay.
So, can I get money for doing the stuff I like? Great.
Right.
And I think this was actually a common theme, like even until today,
You had a lot of clarity, I think, since young about your passions and purpose.
Yeah. I mean, at least for what I'm interested in and want to pursue. And I think that's a really fortunate situation to be in, because I know others, for them, it's maybe a little bit harder to actually find like what they are passionate about, what they want to do. And I remember like I barely made it through school because I was just really not interested in any of this, right?
Of course, yeah.
And but I immediately had like a job and really worked in IT and consulting and all of these things, and know many of the other schoolmates and everything. They like really didn't even know what they should study or what they want to do with their lives and everything.
Yeah.
So I think I was always fortunate with that I always was interested in something, and also fortunately was something that was in demand in the market, in the work environment as well. And it always went essentially from like career step to career step to career step based on what I really want to do, and I found a way to pursue this at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Was there a turning point for you where you realized this level of intentionality was important for you to get the success that you wanted?
I think one of the turning points was when I realized that, because I was just really going with the flow, that it doesn't always get you in the right position that you want to find yourself in life.
Yeah, right.
And I think this was actually 5 years ago when I had like this big moment of self-reflection where I realized, oh wow, it's been, I don't know, like 10 years since I was in Asia and other things, and I kind of like realized, oh wow, like I haven't never actually taken the time to sit back, take a look at where I am and whether I'm actually going the direction that I want to go to.
Right.
Because I was always following like the path of, oh, this is so exciting. Then opportunities came and just, oh yeah, let's take this one. And I think that was a really big turning point to also realize, okay, there's more to life than just that passion. It's also very important that, like, if you don't have a plan, then you're part of somebody else's plan.
Right.
And I think this is one thing I realized, even though it was a very interesting journey and I really enjoyed most of these experiences. It was still like not always a deliberate choice for what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. Yeah. And I think that was a very big turning point. Is also where I started the Happy Life Design Framework and writing these things down to kind of like figure out what's important in life, what's important to me, what I think happiness is, what I think like these important areas are to make sure that you are doing well and you're feeling content and all of these things. But yeah, anyway, so I think that was just the main point I want to say, is that I was always driven by kind of like what my passion was, no matter if it felt like the normal path or the easy path.
No, I love that. I love that. And, you know, I think that's actually something a lot of people can resonate with, right? Which is, hey, you figured out that following your passions is important. And I think that's so beautiful. That's lovely. And I'm so happy you got that experience to pursue that. But to what end, I think is what you're talking about, right? I pursue my passions to what end? Okay. What is the life I'm going to design around? And I love that you have like a happy design framework. Let's talk about that, because I love that. As always, I love frameworks too. So I think we're very aligned on making sure that that's something that, you know, there's a way that we can make these successes repeatable, right? And that's what we use a framework for. But specifically here, I think what's really important is, you know, what is this life plan that you talk about? Maybe it's in the form of the design framework, but I'm curious, like, you know, how did you decide on these areas that are important to you? And what does it mean for you as an individual, right, to be excellence in all of these, right? Whatever metric you're using.
Yeah. I think the first answer would be also, or first thing I want to say is having had always this laser focus on the passions and really putting this in front of almost everything else was also cause of a lot of pain and grief along the way, because essentially like giving life years was what's happening, and I didn't really anyways, the point is that I was really focused on achieving my passions and really excelling at that. But there's obviously a lot of different facets to life that are important, you know, like your community, your circle of friends, your other interests, what you want to achieve outside of just excelling in the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I think that's also really important reflection that, you know, life is not binary. You know, It's not just this one thing and you go for it and everything else is unimportant.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really important realization that helped me, you know, change path or change trajectory a little bit in how I want to live my life. But in terms of the happy life design framework, for example, along the way, I did a lot of like meditation and like self-help and like trying to figure out myself and all of these things, of course, like everybody else does. But I think the important point was for me to realize that ideally, if you're just by yourself and like if you're, let's say, a monk in a cave meditating, not having anything, you should be able to be happy, right? So arguably, like when I started this design framework, it all starts with oneself. If you're not in a good space or mentally or also physically, like your health, your physical health and your mental health, then I think everything else in life is going to be an uphill struggle. It's going to make everything much harder. And I think if you manage to have like a good mindset, you're optimistic, of course not naive necessarily, but I think finding the positive in many things and even in challenges and failure and all of these things, finding ways to reframe it and learn from that and having this positive mindset, I think is one of the key pillars of having a happy life. Because if you need to have a good job or if you need to have a great relationship and other things that are actually outside of your control, you're not going to be able to, you know, there will always be other things that are out of your control that you want to achieve to be happy.
Yeah.
And if this is the outline, like the baseline, it's not necessarily the best place to find yourself in, I found. And so this was essentially the first step. Make sure that, you know, you can meditate, or don't even have to meditate, just that you are in a good mental state, that you are ideally doing well, you are, you know, friendly, you are if you meet yourself, ideally you would like who you meet and you would be happy to be your friend as well, right? And the person that you know. And I think that's also a really interesting exercise to go through.
Of course,
And honestly, like in the early years, I may have not liked being my friend as well. And I think this changed over time quite a bit. And I think it's a good measure of, you know, working on making sure that you have a certain amount of self-awareness, you have a certain amount of, you know, empathy also with yourself and others. And just like this was actually the first step. I think the other part is also, like I said, the physical health, you know, like eating well, making sure you exercise so that your body that houses your mind is ideally in a decent position. Makes a huge difference, you know. And I can speak from experience as well. I actually had 20 kilos more than I had now before. So I
can't imagine. Where would you add that?
And so I really know like the other extreme of this as well, where you just don't really care about your body. You just eat and enjoy and like do all the bad things essentially. And it's not a good vessel for you to achieve things, let's put it this way, right? And so I think also being like very mindful of how like not accumulating too much debt in terms of your physical abilities and stuff, and managing that just the same way you manage everything else in life really is, I think, a powerful starting point, because who can control that? You can.
I think you said some really important things there, Stefan, and I'm going to kind of narrow them down a bit, because I think one thing that I notice is, there's a lot of deep work that you've done to understand yourself. And lovely, lovely stuff, right? I think you understand yourself to a very, very high degree. There's a lot of self-awareness there. I think what comes along with that self-awareness is that it's, you can explain it for you. Like, I think this makes a lot of sense to you, right? Because that's your experience. But what I'm very interested for is like breaking it down so that like, hey, someone who is like a step before your journey, right? Maybe doesn't have to go through so much pain and tribulations to get to where you are now. And I think we can do really good in explaining that. So let's get somewhere with this, because I love it. We're very close to something amazing. I promise the viewers, I promise you, this is really cool. So you mentioned that you want to be someone that if you met, right, you would like to hang out with, you like to be with. Let's describe that person, right? Do you have, like, imagine that person? Because I'm sure like it's a constant evolving journey. It's not like perfect, right? And I believe you're embodying many of those values today, I'm sure, because you're one of the most empathetic, kind, very caring people I've ever met. So obviously there's a lot of work to get there. I don't think it's overnight, randomly came up. But I'm curious, like, what qualities or traits would you describe this best version of you?
I think first of all is also going back to the biggest lesson I've learned, right? Like, everybody you interact with is a human, right? And is no better or worse than yourself. And I think bringing this basic like empathy for everybody to understand that, okay, everybody is on their journey in life and everybody genuinely likes to be helpful or useful or try to be the best version of themselves. And I believe that, I think an easy way to put it, for me, everybody starts with 10 points.
Okay. Interesting. Points. Okay. Tell me more.
To say.
Yeah. I love it.
There's other, I've met people where everybody starts with 0 points and people have to really earn their trust and earn their point to get into, like, to allow them to be included in a circle. And I know I've met people, there are no points,
Everyone's the same, I would treat you the same no matter what.
Exactly, right? Okay. And I think, anyways, for me, it's more like, I try really everybody I meet to, give them my attention, give them, not dismiss them or treat them any badly. It doesn't matter if it's whoever it is, right? And I think that's a very good starting point, because I also feel that if people get this kind of feeling that you are approaching them with warmth and with, good intentions, they will immediately respond very differently to you. It's almost like disarming, because you can think back for yourself, meeting people that just get like this icky feeling where you don't trust them or there's something off about them. And the feeling when you meet people that are, like, hey, they're super nice, they have a good vibe and a good aura about them, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
And I think this is something that if it comes from a good place and with good intentions, it already starts like making things so much easier, right? So I think this is number one. Like,
before we move on from that, like, how did you get that realization? Was there a role model that you looked after? Was there some, like, where did you get that concept of this is the person I want to be?
Actually, I think a lot of it was subconsciously, because I remember meeting a friend of mine that I respect a lot. And when we had a conversation about this, he actually told me this, like he was actually a role model in this, because I really respect him and how he is and who he is as a person. And even though we don't know each other super well, but it's just like so authentic and so good. And he actually said, like the same thing. He didn't used to want to be his friend if he looks back at how he was as a person.
Yeah.
And then I met him at a point where clearly he would be, everybody would be happy to, have that person in their lives, because just so pleasant and so authentic and so genuine,
Of course.
And so I think this is just something like the people you meet, or like meeting this kind of person, like this person, it can leave like a very strong impression. And so I think it's more like having this almost like in the back of your head and ruminating over it over years and these kind of things. Some of these things you just internalize. And I think it's maybe just having this as a kind of like earmarked as a state or a goal for yourself.
Yeah.
Then I think over time, naturally, you kind of like gravitate towards that, and it keeps becoming like part of like how you think about yourself when you think about yourself. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that makes sense.
No, it is. And I think it's awesome. Like, again, we're going to break this down one by one, right? So part one was, again, I'm going to repeat to make sure I understood correctly, is that, you found this amazing, individual that was in your life that gave you an example to look into, where it's like, hey, this person is genuine, makes me feel valued, makes me feel heard, right? Is there present with me? And that seems like something that I might want to do to, interact with other people and make them feel a certain way, right? You liked that feeling.
That feeling, yes, but I think it was also really that he seemed so comfortable with himself. He really felt like he's happy in his skin. He's like comfortable. He's like not putting on a mask or anything like that, right?
I love that.
And I think at that point when I met him, I did not feel the same way about myself, right? I felt like, and there's obviously many shades of this kind of feeling, and I think many people can empathize with that. But at the end of the day, like realizing, okay, maybe I would not currently be super happy or want me to be my own friend, right?
Yeah.
Which is a tough realization, but it's an honest one, right? And I think it's very much a point where if you keep open to this kind of thoughts and these kind of things where you can improve yourself, that's really impactful because ultimately, like, okay, it's not that necessarily I want people to like me so much, but the more authentic and happy you are about yourself and with who you are and who you become, and the more you align with that, the more things just fall into place, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think like the really cool part about this realization for you, and I'm sure I had this personal realization as well, by the way, like, and I think that's something I very much resonate with, is that I think we all go to a stage in life where before, I don't know how to call this, like, but just a different perspective perhaps, right? But before we have a perspective that like, hey, we're perfect the way we are, right? It's other people that need to change, right? I'm sure many of people can resonate with this statement. It's like, hey, how come other people are treating me this way? How come they, it's always about them. But then one day we wake up and we realize that, hey, there are things that we can do, right, to better ourselves. We look within, and then we really truly introspect, like, am I a person that I would have wanted to be my friend? And I can be very, very honest that there are many points in my life where I'm like, that guy sucked. That guy really, really sucked. No one should be this guy's friend, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It may have looked good to be his friend, right? But like, if you really dig deeper, it was like, there's probably a lot of inner work that needed to be done then. And for sure, so much that needed to, improve to the point where like, hey, today I'm like, yes, I am still getting closer and closer to be someone that like I think is my best self. It's a high bar, certainly. But I think the important point too is that not to hate yourself on the journey to get there. Because if you hate yourself on the way to get there, you're not going to improve.
Very important. Yeah.
There's so many times when I was like, hey, I hate this part of me, but because I hated it, because I didn't accept it, there's no way I was going to change it, right? Because I'm not working on it. I'm avoiding it, right? I'm like, hey, I don't want to touch this, right? This is this deep, dark part of my, personality, consciousness, whatever it might be, right? That I don't want to touch because I think it's, not me. But then if I do that, then I don't end up actually talking with it, understanding it. Why are you behaving this way? Why are you so reactionary? Why do you, talk to people this way? And you kind of slowly understand yourself and in a very empathetic way. And I think that's really what you're discussing there too. And I love that.
Absolutely. It's a really important point because obviously it's not a binary thing as well, right? It's not like you're a good person that is likable or not. There's like many different areas in life and parts of where you can improve or where you're maybe not exactly where you want to be, right? And also, cutting yourself slack, I think is also very important because we are always our own worst critics.
Yes.
And there's actually a really interesting exercise I've done as part of like one of the programs I went through, which is like called the inner parent or inner parenting. So instead of you always giving yourself a hard time, you kind of like put yourself into the position that you're your parents or giving your kid kind of like feedback, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't go to your kid like, you suck at this and you suck at that. You would be a more empathetic and more caring about giving feedback and, it's okay. There's things you can improve. Yeah. And I think that's a much healthier way to approach the whole thing.
Yeah.
And some of the very interesting people I've met on this journey as well and through these programs are like they're the very much not having any self-critic going on where you like put yourself down personally, right? Like, or you drop something, oh, you're so stupid or something like that, or
Right.
like it's more like, all right, I can do better, of course, but
Yeah.
it's just how you frame it. It's just how you deal with these kind of things that's just making a difference. Because you can be a very aggressive person towards your own self and very, like really rough and harsh. But don't have to be. You can give yourself a lot of empathy and a lot of support as well, and you can still change. Because as long as the flow is good, you don't have to be your own worst critic and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because you mentioned like inner parenting, and I think what's really good about programs like this, right? And many of the things that we also try to do here at the foundation is that sometimes we don't have good role models for what a good parent is. Many of our parents, maybe, right, are the type that, when you do something wrong, they say, why do you do that? How could you do it this way? And just really make you feel bad about making a mistake versus recognizing that mistakes are normal and there are opportunities for improvements, right? And really embracing that in a more empathetic way. Oh, that's okay. What did we learn here, right? And like a much warmer approach to that. So what I think is really helpful, and thanks so much for bringing that up, is that, having situations like this where you get a real look into what an empathetic conversation actually looks like, right? Into like, hey, you feel this way, you're blaming yourself. That's normal, right? Because no one wants to make this kind of mistake. You don't need someone else to blame you on top of that, right? Because if someone's blaming you, then you go into self-defensive mode and you're not going to change, you're not going to improve because you're just, I'm like so like already anxious about myself. I already hate myself. And then like someone else is telling me that all these things that I already think in my mind, not helpful, right? Yeah. So recognizing that and loving yourself in that moment so that you can actually improve that. And I think so much of it comes from having that, frame of reference to know that, hey, there is a different way to approach this. It doesn't need to be so painful, right? And the pain itself just needs to come from the experience, but the pain doesn't need to come from like I think Buddha or whatever, like the Buddhist scriptures has like a good quote, like, pain isn't suffering, right? Pain becomes suffering when you make it suffering, right? Pain is natural. Pain will help you grow. Pain will stimulate whatever you need, but suffering is in your head and it's in your choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. And so I think we deviated a bit from, I think you had a few points on like the better person that you wanted to be, right? And I think initially it started off from, like you said, there's this person who had these qualities and you really liked. Is there any other things that, encapsulate the person you want to be?
I think trying to understand where maybe your blind spots are that you may not even be aware of where you are not up to speed with what you maybe where you want to be. Let's put it this way, right? Sure. And blind spots are always hard, but I think there's also this kind of opportunity to just self-evaluate where you're at and where you're at in different areas of life, and get this kind of like feedback loop going for these things as well. Yeah
Actually, this is probably a good time to talk about this, right?
Exactly.
And so if you guys don't know, basically for every guest that comes on, we try to get them to draw something on the board that represents what leveling up means to them. So Stefan, would you like to explain a little bit of this and tell us about what's on the board?
Yeah, certainly. So what you see here is essentially 3 circles now to illustrate the concept. And this goes pretty much hand in hand with what you just alluded to.
Sure.
That no matter where you are right now, it's always good to kind of like evaluate in different perspectives and from different viewpoints. How are you doing in life? How are you like in situation A, B, C, D?
Sure.
Where maybe, and this also it also comes in the picture, maybe talking to other people like yourself and finding new maybe blind spots or areas where you're like, oh, I could improve that. That would be great, right? And I think it's like this kind of like self-evaluation of the status quo to understand, okay, where are the things that you're happy with your own being and with how you are in life and how you are in different situations.
Yeah.
And then also kind of like all right, finding out what are the areas where you actually want to improve in, and what are the areas where you can maybe get better.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, cool. Now let's go into this new direction where you can really start taking active, maybe building habits or taking active steps towards improving certain areas in life.
Right.
And once you are getting to that, obviously it's not like the next day or the next second you are in this thing. It's more like a journey to that new direction. And there's a lot of like self-reflection along the way as well. But then after a while, you would realize, oh, cool, a few months have passed, and oh, look, I've actually taken up these things. Oh, I've not taken up these things. I've not improved.
Yeah.
But it kind of gives you like a little bit of a framework or like a model that you can go through and like kind of keep looking at where the areas in your life that you want to improve, if any, right? And I'm sure there's always something, right?
Right.
And it doesn't mean necessarily getting a new skill. It can mean that as well. It can mean so many things, but ideally it is a step in a direction where you see your future self that is even more aligned with who you want to be and who you want to become.
Yeah.
And you're taking active steps towards that journey because, you know, there's so many people that I respect and I really value and that are my role models and that I like, you know, follow and I'm really like looking up to.
Yeah.
And everybody has them, right?
Sure.
And I think it's always important to realize that they're also just humans.
Sure.
They may seem like superhumans to you, but they probably are at that point because they put in the hard work and didn't do the shortcuts to achieve whatever they are that you respect and whoever they have become, right?
Sure.
And I think this is a really, really important thing to consider and to realize that you can essentially be whoever you want and you can achieve whatever you want. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that there's a shortcut or a life hack to get there. Yeah. There are most times, more times than not, it's going to be hard work and, you know, going through a lot of tough cycles and iterations and fails and other things to get to where you need to be. But I think you can become anyone and any more aligned to what you are, and no matter what you want to do by following this approach. And I think that's really powerful and it's really empowering as well, because if you realize that the only limitation you have is your creativity and your outlook and whatever goals you set yourself. You know, it's a really fun way to go through life, because you can really think, okay, actually, who do I want to be, and what are the characteristics I want to have? What is who is the person I want to become? Right.
100%. Yeah.
And as you go through this and you iterate, you know, over time, you just improve and get better, hopefully. And maybe in some areas you get worse again. And it is fine, you know, it's just part of just finding a way to make this more structured, maybe, and more deliberate.
Sure.
And that's kind of like where this came from.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, to summarize what you said, I think so many amazing things there, right? It's like, you know, this is where you are, right? Status quo. That's how you live your life day to day. And then you choose that, hey, I'm going to start, you know, improving different parts of that. Well, first it's a level of understanding yourself, right? You know, what are all the different places you are right now? What's status quo to you, really? Like in the form of relationships, family, you know, career, et cetera, right? Make some change. You get a new direction, right? That becomes your new status quo.
Correct.
And then you keep iterating on that. And then you end up going. And then you have like different phases of, you know, who you are as a person and who you want to become. And I think you said something very good, is that like your role models, they didn't become that overnight. Nobody becomes overnight sensation success. Yeah. Like a lot of times media likes to portray that because it's a convenient story, right? Overnight, they became this amazing person that like, you know, has all these things and like has all this fame, etc. No, they probably grinded for like many, many, many years to get there. And yes, there are some like that are really overnight sensations, but to maintain that, they have to really keep up the work, right?
Yeah,
they don't just stay famous forever. You see so many like, you know, child movie stars, right? That, you know, fall off. And that's just because they haven't learned how to maintain that level of success. And if you follow what, you know, you're describing here, exactly that, you're going to be able to iteratively succeed in so many different of your areas, because first of all, you're not going to be able to work on everything all at once, right? You're going to work at one part of your life one time, and then so you understand yourself, you unlock your potential in some way, right? Because you realize where you can tweak yourself, improve that, then go back and do it all over again.
Mm.
And ideally, you can also augment the process by helping others, which I think you're doing a lot
Yeah.
as well, to really give people a better understanding of like, hey, this is my journey, and this is how other people can also learn from that experience as well, which
Yeah.
I think is so valuable because perspective is everything.
For sure. Even though you may go in a new direction,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to go all the way to where you thought you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
and that this is now going to be something that you have to totally incorporate or make a new part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to realize that even just exploring a new direction and realizing maybe halfway through that, okay, maybe not what I thought it would be or not what I actually want to do,
Yeah.
is totally fine to then
Perfectly
reevaluate,
okay.
right? You don't
Yes.
have to fully commit and go there. And like, I think that's the beautiful thing about life as well. You know, you
Mhm.
can explore so many things.
Yeah.
And your lifetime is long enough to, don't have to just be a master of like a, you know, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think life is long enough to become, you know, jack of all trades and master of some, you know, and I think,
Wow. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
and I think that's really important. And, you know, like, it's okay being a jack of a certain trade, even if you don't really need to and use it anymore, because that's totally fine. It's also part of life to enjoy and explore these kind of things.
Yes.
And not everything has to make total sense and be
Never.
full of meaning. It's just like part of figuring it out as well. And I think
Mhm.
another good saying is turning over rocks, not finding something is also progress.
Yes. 100%. Because you turn off with that rock, you know that rock doesn't have something that you want. And that's
Exactly.
important. Right. So I think to add on to this, like this discovery phase of like maybe going back to status quo, maybe, right, is a good thing.
You may have already learned something along the way, right? And
Yeah.
you can go in a different direction now, right? And yeah, I think as long as, you know, you give it enough attention and, you know, like you give it enough time to actually explore it, not just, oh, I want to be this, you give it a half a day, like, oh no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
I think there's still like the intention and setting these things properly and making sure that you
Mhm.
actually, you know, you don't just go quickly and do a lot of things and don't know anything,
Yeah.
but you still really be like, you're more like deliberate about it. You're
Sure.
more like focused on what you want to achieve and give it a good shot.
Well, you know the variables that are going in. I think
Yeah.
it's like if you do a science experiment, but you have no idea what the ingredients are in your chemical experiment, or you don't even know what's like contaminating the beaker, or you don't even have a step-by-step procedure of how to go at it. Like I think that again, not to say like you need so much structure to pursue these things, but at least like know what you're trying out. Because a lot of times I see that, and it's a big shame, is that some people go and say, hey, I've tried all these different things.
Yeah.
I've tried to be that, I tried to do that, I tried to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, what did you really try? What did you
Exactly.
really test here? And just again, it's perfectly normal to feel this way. I think we're not taught this in school, and we really should, right? How to properly learn and see what we are and who we can become. But I think the really important thing here is that, we should all be able to give things a proper try. And the way to do a proper try is to isolate the variable and understand like, hey, I'm trying this part. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean all of it doesn't work, right? Some people try a new career and they're like, oh, first day at work, like they get a bad experience. This is not for me,
Exactly.
right? And obviously that's because you already one foot out the door, which is why I think this is so important, is that, hey, commit to it, try it out, but know that it's okay to go back.
Exactly.
But commit. You have to commit. Yeah.
Don't say like, oh, I want to be an influencer. You shoot off one tweet, don't get any engagement. It's like, okay, I tried.
Right. Which again, I'm sure very relatable to some people. And again, it's okay to feel that way, right?
Yeah.
Doing something new is scary. Let's not sugarcoat that, right? It is scary. But the thing is, the best things in life come when you discover something underneath that rock, right?
Yeah.
Might not be amazing at the beginning, might be a cockroach, right? But just maybe there's gold somewhere. And if you are systematic in like flipping over different rocks as you keep going on, and you're not just flipping the same rock. Oh no, it's a cockroach again. I'm never going to try that again. Oh no, it's a cockroach again. Like, you're not going to do anything different, right, with your life. And so I think that is like a very, very interesting point. And I'm so happy that you made that. Yeah. Wow. You're going to iterate, right? You kind of know what areas in your life you want to improve, right? That's an ongoing journey. I'm sure you have cycles for that. What is this current cycle you're in?
Yeah, I think the current cycle for me is almost like doubling down on the things that I've explored and the new directions I've explored over the last 6 years, but in quite a different way. Let's put it this way.
Interesting.
So I think right now there is obviously still a lot of areas about myself that I want to improve and get better at. No question about it, right? But I think there's also kind of like maybe escape velocity, if you will, where, if you're already on a path of like kind of like self-reflection and being open-minded and trying to, understand where you're going, that you're naturally gonna improve and gradually get better in certain areas. It's like, what we've talked about this separately, like the being unconsciously incompetent, being consciously incompetent, being consciously competent, and being unconsciously competent, right? And so I think in a lot of these areas where you are already, and we don't have to go into all of this, but essentially, if you're at a point where you are already consciously competent, or even consciously incompetent, meaning you're doing things in life where okay, it's no longer a blind spot. It's something that you are aware of. It's something that you are actually, okay, this is something that I can get better at. But as long as you have this awareness, you can gradually like improve over time as well, right? So I think a lot of these areas right now, I'm either already consciously incompetent or consciously competent.
Okay.
And I'm trying my way towards like improving these things in my life.
Okay.
But I think, of course, keeping an eye open for what are maybe other blind spots where I may not be actually where I want to be, and where it's like a big area of improvement still. That's still something, I always keep an eye out and always try to see where these areas that I'm not even aware of that I suck at, right?
Right.
And so I think, but this is more like, also it's really important to surround yourself with people like you that really are helping, like having good, meaningful conversations that are not just, how's the weather? Yeah, it's hot, nice. But really trying to, uncover things that one may not be aware of. Which is then again an opportunity to improve on, right?
Sure.
So I think that's something that's just like, so putting all your ducks in order, if you will. I'm not sure if that's anyways, but
anything that comes to our mouth is a saying from now on. I'm going to quote everything.
So, like once you have like a clear outlook of what you want to achieve, and for me, I know my path I really think is gonna stay very entrepreneurial, really focused on creating value in different areas. I really am excited about leveraging artificial intelligence in a lot of ways, but it would be a whole different topic that I don't want to get started with.
Yeah, a very expert-led topic, I'm sure.
But so this is like the career side where, I'm very clear on how I want to spend my next 5, 10, 15, 20 years in terms of what I want to achieve and how I want to structure this. Doesn't mean that I want to only be working and only focusing on career and companies and these kind of things, but also finding a really, really solid balance between the things I'm passionate about and the things that I want to do in life. Starting a family, all of these things are very, very important.
Yeah.
And so I feel like right now it's just like, it's a really excellent time here in Singapore, also being like here with you guys and having like this environment where there's very few distractions.
Yeah.
There's very, very is a very, very focused place to be able to, come up with what's this new direction in life right now, and what are the pieces that are really that I want to spend more time on and really, get all in the right position.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of like what's next is just really stepping back again, really making sure that what are the important things in life. And again, this is not a yacht or something like that. This is very, very simple things, and realizing that even not achieving them is also totally fine.
Yeah.
But at least giving it a good shot and doing the best to actually go there.
Yeah.
But really trying to enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride without, putting the happiness or the reward function into the future after achieving something, but trying to really stay in this kind of like flow where every day, I get up at 5 a.m. pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get up and excited to work on things, and so many interesting things I want to do, so many people I want to talk to, all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is really exciting. But yeah, just making sure that these things can be pursued, that these things are all, yeah, how should I say, that these things are just being pursued and these things are very clear what they are, that you
Yeah.
can really split your life in a way that you have enough time for everything and really make sure that you enjoy that journey, I think is really the next step to keep
Sure.
iterating on that. Yeah.
So, this podcast is proudly supported by Our Family Without Borders. It's a co living space that is built by the Koistri family, where you can not only choose the space, you choose the people. And the whole idea is that you can grow, learn, and live with amazing people around the world who want to help you level up, who want to have meaningful conversations with you, and who want to be with you on your growth journey.
Honestly, since day one, it has been just a positive surprise in all aspects. It's a really lovely place to just focus on your life, focus on the things that you are excited about. People like Conrad and many others in the space are just really amazing folks as well. So I learned a lot already in the time I've been here, had most amazing conversations, picked up a lot of the habits that I was always hoping to pick up. So it's really something that I'm very, very glad I got to experience and I'm experiencing. So I can really recommend it for those of you that sounds interesting for. Yeah, it would be a very good experience for everybody. I can assure that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Stefan. I really appreciate your sharing, and 100% we appreciate you being here. I think we've learned so much from you. It's a space where we can all grow and learn together. We have meaningful conversations basically every time we meet each other,
Yeah.
right? From random times in the day when we're just taking a break or when we're having meals during our lunch times and dinner. It's just really a place for us to have communal gatherings and, just really maximize the learnings that we're having in day to day. If I'm learning something and I can share that with you, then you don't have to go through that experience, hopefully
Exactly.
the same way that I did anyway, with the same amount of pain. And I think it's just lovely to have this space. We're so lucky to be supported because we have this amazing studio space now because of Our Family Without Borders. So if you are looking for a place to live in Singapore or in Japan, and hopefully more locations opening up soon, just write in, let us know, and go to ourfamilywithoutborders.com. Now back to the show. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for sharing. I think that was obviously something that you've been thinking about quite a bit. And it's not easy to design your own life, obviously, right? It's a lot of pain, trials and tribulations, a lot of self-reflection and confronting, parts of yourself that you maybe didn't want to confront. So if I may, I want to just kind of reflect with you on that, because I think that there's a lot that you are very self-aware of, right? You know that this is the journey that you want to be on. And obviously what I'm hearing right now is this phase of your life is a reconsideration of all the things that you've learned, a reformatting, so to speak, of trying to figure out hey, these things I learned before about where I want my life to be, are they still the same today? Because they can change, right?
Yeah.
It's perfectly normal for it to change. And to see how do you balance now your extreme passion for your career, but also your extreme passion for wanting to build up that life that you want, that personal life, family and all those things. And am I correct to say that you don't have a clear answer today yet? That's something you're figuring out as you go along.
I think I have a very clear picture in my mind of how this, the new direction, the new circle that I'm going towards, what the characteristics are of that, what it will feel like, all of these things, and what this is. And so I think there's obviously a lot of small details and big details that have to be figured out along the way.
Yeah.
But it's more again, setting this direction and making sure that I spend, the time I have in a way that allows me to get as close as possible to where I want to be next year, right? And I think that is, again, not coming from a place of need and want. It's kind of it's almost talking about the cherries on top,
Sure.
It would be great to get there, and I would love to achieve that.
Yeah.
But this is not not achieving that is not going to be a fail. Is not going to be in between achieving happiness.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think this is kind of how I'm thinking about life a lot these days. Really, yes, there's always room for improvement, and there's always things that you can achieve and that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And it's really important to go for these things.
Yeah.
And again, whatever that is for oneself, everybody can decide and should decide for themselves.
Yeah.
But as long as you enjoy the journey as well, and I think it's that's it, and things will change and
Yeah.
that is fine. But I think I have a very clear picture in my mind what is next. But there's obviously a few variables that are undefined and are still yet to be clarified.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Yeah.
Yeah. So to recap there, like it seems like, you know the direction of where your next circle is going to be, right? You know that like that's like the area that I'm going to shoot towards, right? And the thing now is just to get there. And obviously there's details as you go along, right? And it's again okay to not have all the details. And I think that's really good that you're not letting the lack of clarity on the details stop you from pursuing the direction. I think a lot of people get mixed up with there. It's like, hey, if I don't have every single detail, I'm not going to go to that next step. No, you can definitely like shoot towards something, right? Because again, you know that you can always go back if you don't really like it, but commit, right? Shoot towards it, figure out as you go, get that definition as you get there. And then once you get there, you figure out this definition, maybe it's not for you, right? Again, there's many different levels of like trying to figure out like, hey, how much, I guess, definition do you want before you pursue something? And that's fine. That's your own personal decision. That's your own risk-taking mechanism, 100%. But for you, like seemingly is like you have this perspective that, yes, these are the different things that you'll figure out along the way. And it's okay for you to get there when you get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely, lovely. And I think like what's really interesting too is like, at least this is something I'm picking up and you can let me know if I'm on the right track or not. But it seems to me that there's like a lot of right now a interesting like conundrum where you're like, okay, I know that these are certain things I want, but I don't want to hold myself too hard to getting those because I don't want that to disrupt the peace and happiness that I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis. Am I correct in feeling that a little bit from you?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's not necessarily, how should I put this? It's not like I won't try hard enough and don't want it hard enough,
No,
right?
of course
But I
not.
think it's really the point that, like I will be happy if I am happy if this is achieved. I'm happy if that is achieved. I think if you can just say I'm happy and while you're trying to achieve these things, is really important because also the less pressure you put on these things and all of that, you can't force it anyways, right? It's like you give it your best shot, but I think really the point is don't beat yourself up too much if you don't achieve it as quickly as you want or even ever, because I think that's also a cause of a lot of hardship for oneself. If you must have this, otherwise it's not gonna be good. Then there's a lot of disappointment gonna be along the way because you will maybe hold yourself to too much of a unrealistic picture or a certain direction. And it's okay to have high standards and want to reach for the stars, no question about it, right? But it's also okay that not everything will be achieved that you think you need, and you will realize in life that life goes on even if you don't have certain things achieved. And I think that's also important because going back to Stoicism, actually, the only thing that you can control is how you react to everything.
Yes.
And I think this should apply for this as well. And it's always good to go for it. But when you don't achieve it, set up a new direction, try to reframe life. It shouldn't be dependent on one single thing as well.
Yeah. I love that. And I think maybe I can give some good insights here because it's something that I've personally went through and I know a lot of people go through as well, is that really delicate balance between like, hey, these are the things I want to do, right? And I know that doing them will make my life better, right? So obviously they will make me happy. Like that's a correlation, right? My life better means happiness, whatever, like a loose correlation there. But then, does that mean that when you don't get those things, when you don't act as your best self, does that mean you should be unhappy? And I think that is not the right way to look at it, like you've said. And I can give a very clear and structured way to approach this because I think it's not so easy to always be so clear-minded. And I think a lot of times our monkey brains, right, are wired in a way that, hey, I get reward, I feel happy. I don't get reward, I feel unhappy. And I think there is a very different way we can approach this that can make us happy even when we don't get the things that we want. So the first thing is we've already defined that like right now the fight that we're fighting for, right, is about being, right? We want to be our best self, right? That's wonderful. I love that we're there, right? That's again, like heads and shoulders above so many people who are already just trying to figure out what they want in life. And I think, again, no shame to anybody. And I just think I'm just proud of your journey. And I'm really, really, really proud of you. And so noting that being is an infinite journey, right? Even when you say that role model you had, right, a friend that you had, which, yes, he is genuine. Yes, he feels like someone you want to be around. But I'm certain there is an infinite progression for him as well, right? I'm sure there's like, moments where he's like, I could have been better there. I could have been better there. Like there's so many different places he can still be better. But to you as an outsider, you're already impressed. You're like, oh my gosh, like that's great. Like I already feel so good around him. So remember that, right? The perception you have for yourself and the perception others have of you is always going to be different because you're always your worst critic. So 100%, that's the first thing, right? So noting that, these are the facts. It's an infinite progression, right? You're always going to be harder on yourself. And also, because of the fact that you are on this journey of pursuing something that's infinite, the only thing that you can do is enjoy the actual step of learning, right? So a lot of scientists actually really embody this, which is like, hey, they fail on the discovery. They don't get a paper published. And you ask them, oh, are you so sad? You must be sad. You must hate it. It's like, no, I discovered something. That's what it meant to me, right? The paper is just for me to tell the world about it. But I discovered something meaningful to me, right? I spent a decade of my life figuring this out, proving this principle, right? Figuring out this hypothesis. That made sense to me. And that was what I lived my life for. So in the same vein, when I think about pursuing my best self, the pursuing is already the reward. The fact that I get to pursue my best self, the fact that every day I wake up, I get to choose, like, hey, today I get another chance to try to be me, the best version of me. And some days it's not going to be the best version. I'm going to have crappy days, emotional days that I don't feel my best self. But you know what? I got to do that. And that is already the happiness that I can achieve. And I think if you think about Stoicism, like amor fati, right? Is like love the day, right? Seize the day, love the day, like many interpretations of that. But how I choose to interpret it is that, hey, I love that the day gave me an opportunity to pursue my best self. I'm not going to be my best every day, not even close, right? But I got the chance to do that. And that's all that mattered. And so I think that decouples it very nicely from the outcome, right? I don't have to always be my best self. It also decouples it from, the infinite series progression, right? There is no end state, right? I'm just every day enjoying the journey. And so I don't necessarily have any more that very like, do I pursue it? Do I not? Like, because I'll feel bad if I don't get it after that. I think that is a remnant of, again, our monkey reward-driven brains. And what's really exciting about human life and our human brain is that we can think a bit beyond that. And I don't know if that resonated fully with you, but hopefully it did. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're reaching the end of this podcast, and I would love for you to get a chance to kind of talk into the camera, tell the audience something that, if there's someone out there that resonates with the story and, what you shared on this podcast today, is there any last messages you'd like to give them?
Yeah, I think the last or the one takeaway would be, don't be too hard on yourself, and just keep in mind that, you're always a work in progress, and that's okay. Like, even a flower, is not only pretty when it's in perfect bloom, it's pretty when it comes up, it's pretty when it's wilting. You're always exactly where you need to be right now on your journey, and just stay positive and just really focus on, keep improving and not being too hard on yourself, and being okay with who you are at the current time, even if it's not the best version of yourself that you want to be. And I think that's totally cool. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Stefan, for being on this podcast with us. Hopefully people at home found our sharings insightful. If you have any questions for him or for me, please let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.